She's our planning and safety senior director, and quite frankly, she's the MVP on our team when it comes to safety. She's really got it all together. Leah Shawn, founder and executive director of Vision Zero Network. Ashley O'Reilly, a PhD candidate from the University of Southern California. Dan Hennessy from the city of Santa Rosa, who's also chair of ITE's Planning Council. And last but absolutely not least, Megan Mittman, who's a principal at Fair and Peers, and she's also vice chair of ITE's council leadership team. And I'd be remiss if I didn't give Megan a little bit of extra credit for being some of the impetus behind ITE's roadmap and action plan when it comes to safety. We were developing our new strategic plan a couple years ago, and she was one of the subgroups working on it. She was helping lead it. She stood up in the room and she said, we have to be more bold. We have to elevate our voice. Put her foot down and said, we have to do this. Everybody listened. And it became part of our strategic plan here. And just a little bit over a year later now, we've got the roadmap and action plan. So Megan, thank you. How about a round of applause for the group that put this together? So one of the first desired outcomes out of this gathering today is to first celebrate some of the major successes we've had with Safe System commitment in the United States. Over the past several years, it began with the recommendations from the Safe System Consortium that later helped shape some of the National Roadway Safety Strategy that the US DOT has put in. Of course, it played a role in help instigating some of the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant program, the SS4A grant program. That $1 billion per year SS4A grant program is really, it's funded hundreds of regional, local, and tribal initiatives that they're going to have lasting impacts for decades from now. Whether or not we're going to have an SS4A grant in the next authorization, we don't know. But what we do know is we can celebrate what we've already got right now. When the US DOT did roll out its National Roadway Safety Strategy, partnerships were a big part of that. And that's why it's also a big part of what we have going here today. I could talk about a lot of different examples, but it really boils down to the work that each and every one in this room has helped do. Each and everyone here in some way has contributed to the Safe System approach, elevating its stature in our discussions and in our conversations. So as we celebrate the success of that, we also want to start looking forward. And that's the other part of what we're going to do today. When I'm done with my remarks, we're going to have a panel discussion with a few experts who were instrumental in the early stages of the Safe System adoption. And then that's going to be immediately followed by a group discussion. And let me be clear, the group discussion is the meat of today. That's going to be an opportunity for everyone in this room to brainstorm of what is next. We don't want to spend the whole time speaking at you, we'd like to speak with you. So through the group discussion, we're going to explore ways to further accelerate and, more importantly, institutionalize where we've already got and where we're going. We're going to focus on identifying institutional, technical, and policy priorities. We're going to talk about leadership roles and new opportunities and ways to navigate some of the challenges that we may or may not have depending on political evolution or changes that may or may not happen because we don't know exactly what's going to happen yet. Welcome to the unknown. So please, when we get into these group discussions today, please share your insights, your experiences, your thoughts, your opinions. Don't be shy. I look around the room. I don't see a whole lot of shy people around here anyways, but that's a good thing. And I'm going to give you one personal plea as you're here today. Before you leave the room today, if you have to leave early or if you wait till the very end, two things. Number one, I want you to take at least one new insight that you gained from today in your mind. And number two, I want you to have one action in your mind that you can do to help further advance the Safe System approach. Now, that action can be part of a bigger group, it can be part of your organization, your institution, it can be something personal that you are going to do. You don't have to share with anyone, it can be just you, but at least think about one action item that you can do to help supplant a Safe System approach in our culture as we go forward. So, you're not going to leave here today feel like the job is done. We're going to leave here today as we're just getting started. And with that, I'm now going to have the panel of the Jeffs. We have three experts, all happen to be named Jeff, that played a critical role in the start of all of this. Jeff Michael, Jeff Pagnotti, Jeff Lindley. Sorry I'm not named Jeff. I guess I blew that assignment, or my parents blew that assignment, but we're going to talk for maybe about 15 minutes here, maybe 20 minutes, just a little bit about celebrating how we got to where we are today. So all three of these gentlemen, I think many of you are familiar with them. They all had distinguished careers at USDOT, Jeff Michael at NHTSA, Jeff and Jeff at Federal Highway, in many different capacities. Jeff Michael is now a distinguished researcher with the Johns Hopkins University. Jeff and Jeff played pivotal roles at ITE before I got into my current position, and now are on the semi-retired advisor, help, golf as much as you can with your team. It's a great role. I can't wait to, you're my role model now of what I want to do, enjoying life. So let me start with this first thing, and I'm going to start with Jeff Pagnotti to my left, and Jeff Michael, please feel free to weigh in, but how did this all get started? What happened, and how did we really get started with the Safe System Consortium and Safe System approach?
Yeah, so for me personally, where Safe System approach came on my radar screen actually was through my involvement in the World Road Association. I see John Milton here, who's been very active with that group. And it was around 2010, and I was a U.S. representative from USDOT to the World Road Association and to, or PRC as it's called. And the U.S. took a leadership role on helping to create a global road safety manual. Mike Griffith was very involved in supporting that when he was at Federal Highway. And as we kind of got into that, we had a contract through the World Road Association with a PI named Blair Turner, who came out of Australia. Some of you may be familiar with Blair. He did some work in various places in the US after that. And as he was assembling the knowledge that existed around the world and trying to create this global road safety manual, he centered it on the Safe System approach. And relying on some of his experiences in Australia and things that have gone on in Sweden and other countries. And that's where I first came to understand that terminology and began to look at it. And the things that really resonated with me about that were the idea that humans will make mistakes, and it's our responsibility to help them make fewer mistakes, and when they make a mistake, not have it be so consequential, and that speed kills. And I don't think, this is editorializing a little bit, I don't think we've centered so much sometimes on those two fundamental principles. We talk about all the pieces of the pie or the wheel and all how they all, but at its core, that's what really resonates with me is we have to find ways in the planning, operation, and design to deal with the fact that people will make mistakes, and we have to focus on speed. So then fast forward, Jeff Michael and Deb Hirschman and others put together this thing called the Road to Zero Coalition. They invited ITE and myself to be one of the founding members of that coalition. And as that coalition started to work, in about 2015, 16, there was a report created by the RAND Corporation that on the Road to Zero that had three fundamental pillars on how we could move towards zero. Doubling down on what works, leveraging technology, and prioritizing safety. And in the prioritizing safety area, that was really focused on finding ways to advance the Safe System approach and to advance the idea of safety culture. And so ITE took the lead, working again with a lot of folks that are represented here in the room on really trying to begin to raise up this understanding of the Safe System approach in the United States. And about that same time, FHWA was championing it. Megan was doing a project, I remember, in one of the early Safe System projects, and there were a number of other activities going on. TRB and NCHRP began to get active in that area. So there was sort of this kind of blossoming a little bit from a variety of places around the Safe System approach and elevating it and advancing it forward. So, that effort, I think, under the Road to Zero Coalition helped be a champion for it, but also to develop a variety of tools and clearinghouse and other resources. Robert Wunderlich provided a lot of support in that. The UTC at the University of North Carolina Highway Safety Research Center came along about that time as well, that was focused on really around systems thinking, same basic principles, and extended the work in that area. So sort of that is when I think really following that, I think the consortium, and he really put that together. So I'll maybe hand off to Jeff to pick up the chronology a little bit and talk about sort of what happened, with that as a foundation piece, I think, that was created through the Road to Zero Coalition work.
Thank you. Do you mind if I circle back a
Sure.
little bit? So first of all, thank you for organizing this. And in the spirit of the group activity, you know, I think there were lessons learned during this that maybe are relevant now, and so maybe we could, you know, try to focus on those. But a little bit about timing. NHTSA wasn't really involved. I've been looking around to see who from NHTSA is here, but I think myself and maybe Rob are the only two NHTSA people. Anybody else? So I think that sort of says something. So NHTSA wasn't a big part of this movement, certainly back in the 2010 era. And it wasn't until the end of the Great Recession that NHTSA felt motivated to sort of engage in this area. It was 2015, it was after 8 years of decline, 25% decline in annual fatalities. We were still focused on high visibility law enforcement, frankly, at NHTSA. And, you know, I mean, as many of you would, we were pleased to take credit for the decline. and we didn't look too hard into it, you know, to see what was going on. But every year, it seemed like what we were doing was working, you know, and so we were satisfied with that until the end of the Great Recession. When we realized, well, there had been a recession, that's what was going on. and the numbers started going back up, and we recognized that we didn't have the tools to deal with this on the behavioral side. We just didn't have it, you know. And so we held a conference. At that time, Mark Rosekind was administrator. He was open-minded and still a good friend. He was really excited about doing this. Convened sort of the usual suspects in road safety, including many of you, and, you know, talk about what alternatives do we have. I mean, here we are, 2015. It's, you know, we've dropped from, you know, we dropped down to about 32,000 fatalities. We're starting back up the climb towards where we are now. What do we have to deal with it? We didn't have much, and we came up with some ideas at that meeting. And then Road to Zero was sort of built on the heels of that meeting to sort of carry it forward. And we focused on these three areas sort of strategically. And I remember it was you, Jeff, that thought we had to have three areas, you know. And the three areas were, okay, we need to, what we, you know, call it double down on what works. We need to keep doing what works, obviously. The other side of sort of doing what works was what's coming. At that time it was AVs, frankly. We were in the AV hype cycle. And so we were worried that our colleagues were, you know, too dependent on the technology forecast and wouldn't be motivated to do what we can do. So we had, you know, let's double down on what works. Let's take full advantage of technology, but not inflate our expectations. And then in the middle was this prioritized safety, and that was Safe Systems. And it was combined with safety culture at the time. And so that was sort of in the middle of it. And so that's how it came together. And then I'll just mention one more sort of historical piece. One really clever thing that we did, you mentioned Debbie Hersman. This was right at the end of the Obama administration, and we recognized that we had to diversify. We had to get this out of the DOT. And there's, you know, a certain analogy coming up. And so, you know, frankly, what happened was Mark Rosekind formerly worked with Debbie Hersman. Debbie Hersman had just moved from NTSB to the National Safety Council. She was open to the idea. So we basically moved the program from the DOT sort of deliberately to the National Safety Council to get it out of the DOT, to sort of get it, apolitical. And that turned out to be a really good thing. And I think that there's a lesson there about sort of diversification and the strength through diversification. We used the power of the DOT to get it started, and we, during the early Road to Zero talks, we had 3 administrators talking, NHTSA, FHWA, and FMCSA, and that was powerful, and that got attention, got us going. We never really had the Secretary's office, but we had motion from the administration level. And then we got it out sort of to the National Safety Council, and that they did a really good job. They coalesced and kept Road to Zero going in a very big way, and it's still going, and it's to their great credit for doing that. But now I'll get to what you asked. The consortium was really, it was just something we could do to help. It was something we could do from Johns Hopkins to help. There was a need we felt, to inform the brewing reauthorization process, and this happened sort of at the 11th hour in that process. It actually happened during the extension of the FAST Act before our current authorization, and that's when we did the consortium. Again, gathered sort of the usual suspects. Many of the people in this room developed 10 recommendations for Congress, 10 recommendations for the administration, and some of those took root. And we can't draw a line between those and the root, but some of the things we recommended happened. So then, on to the successes of the current administration.
A lot of good partnerships were involved in all of that. Jeff Lindley, how do you think things are going right now?
Great.
He's saying that because he's retired.
No, I think that we are trying to reflect on this. I think we are either just entering or well into sort of the fat part of the implementation curve on safe system approach. So if you look back to that 10 years when the Road to Zero Coalition started to now, we have a lot of things that we didn't have then.
Mm-hmm.
We have awareness. If you're a safety professional and you're not fully aware of the safe system approach, you've not been paying attention. We have early adopters. We have, as a result of early adopters, we have case studies. We have people that organizations and individuals can talk to that have been there and that can help walk them through the process. We have lots of technical resources, thanks to FHWA and Johns Hopkins and other research and funders. We have safe system in the urban core, safe system in speed management, safe system at intersections, how to build community engagement around safe systems, how to build a safety culture in your organization that would be supportive of safe systems. So lots of technical resources and lots of plans and projects as a result of the SS4A program. Just sort of unbelievable when we were sitting there, 8 to 10 years ago, thinking about this. Unbelievable progress. So we now need to figure out how to keep the momentum going. And the one caution, not caution, but the one thing just to be aware of is there's been a lot of hard work done and a lot of progress, but it's gonna take a lot more hard work. This is not a short process. This will require patience. and perseverance. You know, if you look into what Sweden has done and what New Zealand and Australia and the other sort of early adopters of this safe system approach around the world, they're 30 years in. And they've seen tremendous results. None of them are at zero. None of them think they're finished. So we've got to figure out how to keep the momentum going, which I think is the key to this discussion this afternoon.
So to help us get that discussion going, Jeff, let me ask each of the three of you, if you could say one thing that would help keep the momentum going. Let me start with Dr. Michael, which is the first thing that comes to your mind. What's one thing that could help us keep going?
Well, there's, I think, a couple of opportunities. I feel like we've focused on infrastructure for, great reasons. But law enforcement needs to be brought in, and the vehicle sector needs to be brought in, and they've both recently shown interest. And so I think there's an opportunity to sort of diversify at that level and sort of consolidate the gains that have been made.
Jeff Lindley, what's one thing, if you could give us advice as a group to help us get going?
I think we need to mainstream this. I think we need to start thinking about how we go beyond the safety profession and how we get everybody else that's involved and needs to be involved into the implementation of Safe System at the same level, so that we start thinking about, well, Safe System should be in the AASHTO Green Book. It should be in the Highway Capacity Manual. It should be in the ITE Trip Generation Manual. And those resources aren't quite there yet, but we do need to start thinking about how to better mainstream the Safe System approach throughout the transportation world.
And let me build on that a little bit. I think in this next year, we really need the state and local agencies to be at the point on this. And Roger's here and has been a very visible and strong champion, not only in Washington State but within AASHTO. But I feel like, at the federal level, we're entering a transition period. You're gonna have a new administration with different priorities. Obviously, they have to still implement IIJA and the law, but they're gonna have different emphasis and priorities. And frankly, the first year of a new administration is always a little chaotic and getting organized and on board and all of that. And so I feel like that, over the last number of years, there's been strong federal leadership to go along with the state and local leadership on this. But I think in this next year, it's really going to rely on leadership at the state and local level, supported by associations and others. But and I think if we can get that, it goes toward the mainstreaming, and it goes toward really getting this rooted so that it is part of the way we practice transportation. And I don't think we're quite there yet. There are certainly all the things that Jeff mentioned are there, but I dare say if you went across the IT membership at large or any state DOT or and really asked people, tell me about the Safe System approach and how you practice it every day in the work that you do. You get some positive, and you get a few blank stares and a few things that you probably wouldn't be too happy with. And so that, that says we've got some more work to do. And I think that at least for the next year or so, I think that work needs to be led and really pushed at the state and local level.
So this has all been kind of to help set the stage here for where we're going today. And Megan, before I turn it over to you to start getting the groups going, I purposely waited to do any introductions to see if anybody else was coming in. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I just think it's really helpful for everyone to just hear briefly just your name and who you're with, so we understand